Well, welcome everyone. We're delighted to have participants from different parts of the world, whether you're joining us live or watching at your own convenience. Thank you for being with us for another session of the Spiritism Talk Series, promoted by the United States Spiritist Federation. These presentations are held every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time in the U.S. It is my pleasure to host today's talk, presented by Luiz Lima, who will be speaking on the topic Procrustean solutions. And he will explain what that is, of course. So, everyone, welcome Luis. But before we begin, allow me to tell you a bit about him. He began his journey in Spiritism in 1990. As a serious researcher on the scientific aspect of Spiritism, Luis has been facilitating studies on how to bridge science and Spiritism. Mr. Lima is a renowned lecturer in the Spiritist community and participates in local and national seminars and events. Luiz Lima holds a degree in electronic engineering and works in the computer industry. Please feel free to use the chat capability to send your questions at any time during the presentation. Luis has set aside time at the end of his presentation, and your comments and questions can be addressed. And Luis, the floor is yours.
Okay, Mark, thank you very much. Great to be here. Thanks for having me. And like you said, it's a complicated title, Procrustean Solutions. So before we do anything at all, we need to understand the meaning of the word itself, Procrustean. This word, Procrustean, refers to Procrustes, who is a character in Greek mythology. He also goes by the name Damastes. So if you're reading something about Procrustes, you might find his under the name Damastes. But in order to define what Procrustean is, we need to understand what he did. Who is he? What's the story behind it is? And that's what we're going to do. Like I said, it comes from the Greek mythology. And mythology is this allegorical narrative that makes a point, pass on learnings, and it's similar to a parable. So it's a story that's going to teach us something, and something very interesting, by the way. So Procrustes is also known by the name, or the nickname, I would say, the Stretcher. And you're going to understand why when we talk about his story. So here goes. Procrustes had his house between Athens and Eleusis, which was a very important route, and you had many people going by both ways. And because of the distance between Athens and Eleusis, a lot of people would just spend the night in the middle of the way, and that's where he had his house. So he would invite people over to spend the night. He would offer a bed, and the visitor would supposedly, spend the night and get going next morning. The problem is no visitor ever came alive from his house. And the reason is if the visitor was shorter than the bed length he was offered, he would stretch the visitor so it would fit the bed until the person dies. Person would die. On the other hand, if the visitor was shorter than the length of the bed, he would simply amputate the excess length of the legs. So he would try to fit the visitor perfectly to the bed. So everyone else should fit the bed they were being offered. Nobody ever fit perfectly because, and that's the key, he had two beds with two different sizes. And he would always offer the bed to the visitor that he knew the visitor wasn't going to fit perfectly. So it was an intentional thing to make that happen, and he would end up killing the visitor, either Like I said, amputating the excess or stretching to fit the bed. So everyone would end up dead no matter what. And this became, it became a famous guy, and the word is out there, and a lot of people no longer spend the night in there because it became something new, something known actually. So one guy called Theseus decided to challenge Procrustes. So he said, I'm going to go to his house and I'm going to offer me myself to make Procrustes to fit his own bed, which he claims he fits perfectly. So he goes in, talks to Procrustes, and say, "I want to we're going to do reverse roles here. Instead of you putting me into bed to see if I fit, I'm going to put you in your own bed to see if you fit." So Procrustes goes like, "Of course I fit. This is a joke." So yeah, go ahead and do it. So he puts Procrustes in his own bed, however, across the bed, like that, across the bed. Obviously, he didn't fit the bed. So he got his head and his legs amputated by Theseus to fit his own bed. So, in short, he became a victim of his own rules. He failed because he thought he knew or he had the absolute truth on the subject, and nothing different from what he could envision would ever be possible. So he was a victim of his own, uh, uh, standards that he set. That's the story of Procrustes. So the word Procrustean refers to exactly this. It's a word used to describe situations where we set an arbitrary standard and use that standard so everything else fits in it or complies to it without concern of harm that we do to other people. It doesn't really matter. A Procrustean solution or attitude is when we make the world fit in what we set as being right or being true, or we make the world fit in something that's going to serve as the purpose, or we make the world fit in something that will supposedly resolve our problems. So instead of we adapting to the world in some way, at least partially, the world has to adapt to us. That's a Procrustean attitude, a Procrustean solution. So everything in a Procrustean solution or attitude, everything and everyone must comply to our determinations. And our determinations are based solely on our wishes. So it's like, for example, you want to make the earth to reverse its rotation to satisfy my desires, which is absurd. The earth is not going to do it. But here I am. I'm sticking to what I want, and I think I'm going to make it happen. Obviously, it's not going to make it happen. And we are just wasting time instead of working on something that will make us better, will make us more advanced, will bring us some gain morally, intellectually. We stick, to that supposedly solution to our problems, waiting for everything around to make it happen. That's the story of Procrustes, and that's what Procrustean solution, Procrustean attitude means. Let's bring this to our current lives. So if we hurt somebody, for example, and let's say I hurt somebody, I said something, that hurt somebody, and I know it. And what I do is instead of, going after and trying to, ask for forgiveness, I'm going to wait for that person to apologize to me, which is absurd. But how many of us do this? I know I'm wrong, but I'm not going to apologize. He has to apologize to me. She has to apologize to me. So it's something that we see a lot. Maybe we ourselves do this at times. So instead of us complying to divine law, we want the divine law to comply to us. And that's very complicated because it's never going to happen. what that's going to cause is frustration. The outcome is never going to be what I want. So there's going to be a lot of frustration, suffering, revolt, all of that, because I'm trying to establish the absolute truth, which we are not in a position to, is not our call. For example, another one, if we have a group of people, for example, that we need to establish law. So instead of creating these laws and rules for the group, I create them for myself, and the group has to adapt. So we adjust the law or the rules to the attitude instead of adjusting my attitude to comply with the rules, with the law. Procrustean solution. If you go back in history, long, long, long time ago, when Moses came down from the mount, he brought us the 10 Commandments, which are the moral laws, the divine laws. Those are unchangeable, untouchable. So he brings these laws. Population goes through centuries of trying to understand the law and comply to the law, and then Jesus comes. When he comes to remind us of that moral and establish that as the actual law, and that's the divine law. It's unchangeable. He's clear about that. I did not come to change the law. So what are these laws that we have, the divine laws, will force us as people at one point, as humanity, to create social laws. And the idea about these social laws is to sustain the moral values. Moses himself, when he presents the moral laws, let's just pick one because it's easy to understand maybe. For example, don't kill. When Moses brings this down and presents to the people will simply revolt. They say, oh, what do you mean I can't kill? That's something we do every day. We are in a discussion, it gets heated up, we'll just run the sword through everybody else's body, and we're all done. Now I can't kill. So Moses had to append social laws, which we call disciplinary laws, to sustain that value. Those are called the Mosaic laws. So, for example, the moral law is you can't kill. The disciplinary law could be something like this: you can't kill, but if you kill, you go to jail, for example. So next time, before I run my sword through a person's body, I'm gonna think about it. Oh, hold on. If I do this, I'm gonna end up in jail. So let me be nice here and stop here and let's go. So it changes. It's supposed to change our attitudes. So there's a sequence of things. There's a moral law that made us create these disciplinary laws that influences our attitude. However, think about this. If I am a very important, very known, and a very powerful person within a society, and let's just say that the law is in place. If I kill somebody, I'm going to go to jail. And let's just say that I did kill somebody, but I'm this very powerful person. And then I propose a change in the law. And now the law is going to be like this: you can't kill. If you kill, you go to jail. However, if it's your first crime, nothing is going to happen to you. So now we have a different disciplinary law. And that disciplinary law did not come from the moral law, it came from the attitude. It's reversed. We're going reversed. So these disciplinary laws in our societies today, century, I would say 20 and 21, it became very clear. Now these disciplinary laws establish moral values. They're not moral divine values, but they are what it is perceived within the society. It's acceptable that this is the moral law. So morality is no longer what it used to be. Why? Because we are doing a Procrustean solution, Procrustean attitude. The moral law comes from the disciplinary law, which comes from my attitude. So the law now complies to my attitude. Instead of me complying to the law, my attitude complying to the law. So we reverse the whole thing. And how many of us do this everywhere in the world, everywhere, across the board? So it gets very complicated. Humanity is in a very, I would say, delicate state in terms of morality because of that. Morality was left behind. The attitude has more value than the morality. Here's another idea behind Procrustean solutions. Following Jesus is not the same as Jesus following you. They are different things. When I follow Jesus, I would never, for example, I would never kill somebody. However, let's say that I just killed somebody and I'm going to ask Jesus to help me now. Oh, I'm here, I'm suffering, I have this problem, come save me. That's a Procrustean attitude. It's not going to happen. Either we follow Jesus or we expect him to follow us. And that's a bad expectation because it's going to generate frustration, suffering, and everything that comes with it. For example, another one, telling God what is right and wrong. How many times we look up in the sky and say, God, this is wrong, and such, it shouldn't happen to me, it should happen to him, it should happen to her, not me, I don't deserve this. So we question God about justice because we want to establish our justice and have God follow it. That's Procrustean solution. So there's a clear law that comes from above. We don't follow that law, and we want to overwrite that law with ours and have the heavens above and God follow our law. If they don't, they are not good. Then it's going, of course, it's going to generate suffering, and but that's what a lot of us do. Most of humanity, at one point in their lives at least, have performed Procrustean solutions or Procrustean attitudes. So then there's something called the Procrustean bed. Remember, the bed, person has to fit perfectly in the bed. So the Procrustean bed brings this idea of an arbitrary standard that we establish to which exact conformity is forced. So I establish a standard and everybody has to forcibly follow it. That's called the Procrustean bed. Our life at the stage that we are in terms of evolution is represented by the Procrustean bed. Everything must run around our life, like in the old days, with geocentrism, in which we believed that the earth was the center of everything. Even the sun would just simply rotate around it. And then we found out that's not it. That's not exactly it. So a Procrustean solution is this, quotes, moral geocentrism that we play in our lives, that we perform several times in our lives. So relationships and different situations in our life, they must be tailored to our needs, to our expectations, to our desires, attitudes, and so on. That's Procrustean. As if we were the only source of the truth, the source of the absolute truth. This posture, Procrustean attitudes, denies evolution. What is evolution? I'm better tomorrow than I am today. I will be better in the future than I am now, today. On a Procrustean attitude, that's impossible because we don't change by default in a Procrustean world. We don't change. Things change to comply and adapt to us. So that in itself denies evolution. And what is the purpose of life? Stated very clearly by Spiritism: evolution, moral evolution, intellectual evolution. So by performing Procrustean attitudes, we are denying that to whom? To ourselves. We are undermining our own evolution. Nobody else get hurt, just me, just us. So these Procrustean solutions, they are stagnant. They make us stop in terms of evolution, which prevents, we are preventing ourselves from going up to the next level and learning more and, doing more things, doing better things. And I think it's very clear when you look again back into how we go from the moral law to the attitude, and we were able to reverse that. Look at our laws across the globe for, groups, countries, cities, whatever. Look at a clear, cold, fresh look into these laws, and we will find a lot of these articles in these laws are based on Procrustean attitudes. These laws are written for one person to benefit and everybody else has to comply, or a small group to benefit, everybody else has to comply. So that became almost like a standard. And what happens is a lot of wars, a lot of disagreements, a lot of people just not willing to comply to what that person wants, what that law says. It creates a lot of trouble. And this is becoming more and more obvious because the globe is more open. Every country, every city, it's more open. The internet opens up a new door, so we know what's happening everywhere in the world, and we just see that it's the same everywhere. So these attitudes, they're kind of taking over our lives and taking away our opportunity for growth. Again, if we were able to get, it could be a small group. Let's get the laws for that one group. And we look at it on a cold look. We are going to find a lot of it is Procrustean, meaning a lot of it prevents evolution from taking place, prevents us to being taken over to the next level. Procrustean attitudes create suffering. Thus, it creates illnesses and diseases. We have never seen so many people, so many illnesses and diseases around, and that's around the globe, in all areas of the globe. Why? Because there's something wrong with the standards that we set. It looks like nothing is ever right for us. Everything is wrong. Nothing is ever right. There's only one thing right, us. Everything else is wrong. So it will harm us. It will harm the soul. It will harm the perispirit. So and this is over and over and over, across time, centuries and centuries and millennia of doing this. So this thing becomes automated in our perispirit. That's very bad. Because things that are automated in our perispirit will be with us as soon as we are born in the next life. And if we don't put any effort to change it, this is going to be automated in the perispirit for several lives that will come in. And you see, the idea that we are not even able to identify that we perform Procrustean attitudes makes it even worse. If I'm not able to identify, how can I do something? How can I, work on it? How can I make it better for myself? However, we identify Procrustean attitudes and solutions on everybody else. Because at the level that we are, if I'm right, let's just say that, Procrustean solution, I'm right. Everybody else is wrong. Everybody else has to comply. So take one of these people in the group, everybody else. That person is going to say what? Oh, this guy is bringing up a Procrustean attitude. He wants me to comply to what he's saying. It is, but how about the other way around? We don't see that. So we see this coming from other people, but we don't see that coming from us, from ourselves. And that's why Spiritism is good about it. You will make things clear. You will make us, you will invite us to study, you invite us to read more, to do different things, to force ourselves to have more experiences that will bring up different outcomes from the past. You see, on a Procrustean solution, something that is automated in our perispirit, the outcome is always the same. So we go through an entire life. At the end, we are the same. And then we go for the next life. At the end, that's still automated in our perispirit. Now, like I said, for us to remove that from our perispirit, we need to identify and work on it. How can we identify this? That's what St. Augustine used to say. At night, just think of what you did. That's one way. The other way is when we look at other people's Procrustean attitudes, I should ask, do I do something like this? Have I been in a situation like this? Have I experienced a situation like this? Do I have that attitude here and there, or maybe every day? That's a good starting point. That's why it is necessary to have interaction with other human beings. Life in society, it's a law. So we have the opportunity to see other people's experiences, and they could be, if I'm willing to, beneficial for me, because you will say, oh, this person is doing this, but yeah, just the other day I did something similar. So we have to start looking at what we do. And because it's difficult to look at it alone, we can use other people's experiences. Procrustean attitudes and solutions are typical of imperfect third order spirits living in a planet like ours. That's what the planet is for. That's why the earth is for. It houses spirits. There are third order imperfect spirits where evil dominates or predominates over good. So we are here and we have to make the best out of it. Use the time that we have as a incarnated spirit to get better. And we can. I'm not going to say that we are going to leave this life without a single one Procrustean attitude. No. But instead of 2 million, I can get away from this life with, I don't know, 1,800,000. That's how we purify the perispirit. This thing is automated. So this is typical of third order imperfect spirits. The higher the spirit is, in terms of morality, intelligence, So the higher the place the spirit is in the spirit scale, the less Procrustean attitudes it performs. As we go up in the spirit scale, coming all the way down from the bottom, impure spirits, all the way up towards pure spirits and everything in between. As we go along, going up in our evolutionary process, the tendency is that we perform less Procrustean attitudes. We perform less of these Procrustean solutions. We think we are finding the solution for our problems, but not necessarily. The solution to our problems has to consider the outcome. If we don't consider the outcome, I'm establishing the rules. I'm establishing a whole system of personal justice that everybody has to follow. That's why it's so difficult for us to understand divine justice. Because if we are Procrustean people, it goes against our wishes. Procrustean people establish their justice, and everybody has to follow. No questions asked. So it complicates things for us. I mentioned that following Jesus is different than Jesus following us. That's a typical case. You know, we we can, like, say, go to the bar to get drunk because I made that choice. The bar doesn't come to me. I go to the bar. So I made that choice. And then when I'm at the bottom of it, rock bottom, when I hit rock bottom, I call Jesus to help me. That's Procrustean. In the first place, if I followed Jesus, I wouldn't even go there. So we see these things happening in our lives. We put ourselves in difficult situations. We automate in our paraspirits things that are going to be difficult to be removed later. However, we have a guide. We have Spiritism, which is based on what Jesus brought as a moral message, as the moral of reference comes from Jesus. He came to say, I'm not changing the law, and I'm going to confirm the law to you, and this is the moral of reference. We already have that. We don't have to keep looking to find. It's been published everywhere. We know it. However, our emotions, our ability to control ourselves and do things properly and the right way is still a challenge. It's not that we don't know what to do. We know what to do. Christ came to show that love is the greatest thing ever, but not every kind of love. No, unconditional love. And then we can simply say, oh, yeah, no, we're not there yet. No, hold on. We cannot say that we don't know what unconditional love is. Because think about this. Let's say you have a 2 or 3 years old, and then he just wants to put his 2 fingers in the outlet, the electrical outlet. Well, of course, he's gonna get an electrical shock, and you don't want to let him do it. So you just go to his hand and you hit his hand. Don't do this. He's gonna try again, and you're gonna do that for a second time. He's gonna try a third time, a fourth time, and then at one point, he's gonna do it. And then what happens? He's gonna cry, and for him, it's a tremendous suffering for a small kid. It's a new experience, new bad experience. So what happens? You take that kid and you raise him up against your chest and you comfort him with all your love. For let's just say that you hold your kid against your chest for 1 minute. 1 minute. Within that 1 minute, there is no bills to pay. There is no bad neighbor. There is no, supermarket to be, I have to buy things at a supermarket. Nothing like this. During that 1 minute, it's pure unconditional love. So we cannot say that we don't know what it is. We know what it is. We cannot sustain. We cannot sustain. It's very hard because it is automated in our perispirit. Otherwise, so if you go back, let's say you just put your kid back and that 1 minute is gone. If you think about it 10 minutes later, 2 days later, a month later, you're going to say, wow, that 1 minute was awesome. And it's going to think like later on, when you think about it, it's going to sound like that wasn't 1 minute. It was maybe 30 minutes, but it wasn't. Because, that's, you're not doing a Procrustean solution there. You're doing exactly what the law says. Pure unconditional love. You were seeking love instead of waiting for love to find you. The unconditional love. So the works of charity, fraternity, they're all based on this. And that's why we feel so good when we do perform things like that. So, in short, Procrustean solutions will make us sick, will bring diseases and illnesses along the way. We need to understand what they are. Hopefully, I was able to at least bring to us here what it means and how we can improve a little bit. Don't, we should never be criticizing people for their Procrustean solutions, because surely we do the same, maybe in a different way, but we do the same. So we can use their Procrustean attitudes as a learning and as a stepping stone, I would say. Oh, that person did this. Oh, that was horrible. And I did identify that as a Procrustean solution, Procrustean attitude. So I do the same. I have to that. I have to, flag myself. So I can't do that anymore. So I don't do that anymore. So thank you very much for following us here, for being with us here. And we're going to be open for questions, if any.
Wow. You have given us so much perspective on something none of us necessarily ever thought of before. Yes, we're going to have a Q&A session. It will begin in a few minutes, right after a few announcements. So we invite you all to follow us on social media channels to stay updated on the upcoming events and activities from the USSF. And don't forget to visit the bookstore at spiritistbooks.us, where you will find a wide selection of Spiritist books, including several new releases and one very recent translation I know Josara has been working on for quite some time. At any rate, if you work with our Spiritist youth or are interested in educational resources for children, be sure to explore the Family, Youth, and Children Spiritist Education, or FYCSE, the website at spiritismkids.us. You'll discover all kinds of excellent materials and ideas for youth educators, and there's constantly new things being provided. And be sure to take a moment to check out the portable app for your cell phones, Be My Hope. It offers inspiring daily messages, uplifts your spirits, and it's free on both the App Store or Google Play, Apple Store or Google Play. Okay, those are the announcements, and now we're going to turn our attention to the questions. And again, I just thank you, Luis, for undoubtedly spawning a whole lot of thought here. From the USSF, how does Spiritism challenge rigid moral judgments that ignore personal history, free will and spiritual maturity?
Well, that goes along with divine justice, for example, which looks into all of this. When our justice, our sense of justice is based on the manifest cruelty. We look at a scene and we say, that guy is guilty, this guy is guilty. Divine justice is not. Divine justice collects information from the day of the first day, simple and ignorance, until that point. It considers the personal history, and Spiritism teaches us that. So our what we are today in terms of morality is the sum of all things that we have done, all experiences we have had. In the past, we didn't know how to use free will. We are getting better at it. And that's exactly what you say here, spiritual maturity. So Spiritism is clear about evolution, in which every day we are more mature spiritually than the day before, or to make it more feasible, every end of life we are more maturity, have more maturity than the end of the previous life. So Spiritism teaches us that, and exactly how to understand, because if we don't understand that there's evolution, nothing that I said makes sense, because it's Procrustean means I'm stuck here, and the challenge that Spiritism brings us is we are not stuck here. We think we are, but we are not. You know?
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. Yasko Arakawa writes, Hi, Luis. Great topic. Now I am curious how to analyze Jesus' solution to the case of the adulterous woman in light of Procrustean solutions.
Yeah, it's interesting. He didn't reverse the Earth's rotation, which is what Procrustean solutions do. He followed the law. He was showing to those people that you don't have the absolute truth, which is one and only. Let's throw the stones. He challenged people and said, "There's more. You're not the owner of the absolute truth of reference. No, there's more to be seen." So he brings the idea of, if you haven't done, just go ahead and throw the first stone, and nobody does. So nobody would expect that at all. So it's a way of showing people that you're being Procrustean. There's more things. That's exactly what his approach was. He didn't forbid anybody to throw the stones. He did not. He did not, made anybody throw the stones. He was neutral about throwing the stones, but he brought a perspective that changed the entire collective thought, which is I was being Procrustean. So let me look at other things. That's what it was.
Excellent. Great answer. Okay, another question from the Spiritist Federation. How can Spiritist centers ensure that guidance, passes, or moral counseling do not become rigid formulas applied indiscriminately?
Well, think about this. Jesus, he's going to talk about, let's just say, honesty. Okay, honesty is not relative. It's not a relative concept. It's an absolute concept. We made it relative. For example, we should be honest. But if I take this pen here from you, you're not going to notice. You don't need it, so I'll take it from you. So we just blew the idea of honesty. So Spiritism does not forbid anything. It is pure counseling, pure moral counseling. But you have free will. So if you go to a Spiritist center, you have the moral counseling, you have you go to lectures, you go through studies, and so on. So what you're doing is gathering information on morality in there, on what path to follow. The Spiritist center itself is not rigid or not. It just propagates what Spiritism tells us. which is not rigid. It tells you what it is, but it doesn't force you to do anything. You don't get away from, for example, you go to a Spiritist center for a lecture. When you leave the Spiritist center, about an hour and a half later, you don't say, oh, they're forcing me to do it. There's never such a thing. There's never such a thing. What could happen is that you go for a lecture that talks about, let's just use the example that I said, a lecture that talks about honesty. And you are a very dishonest person. When you leave, you feel uncomfortable. It's not that Spiritism said, this is going to happen to you. No, you feel uncomfortable because you know it's wrong. That's the role of Spiritism. Bring out the information based on what Jesus taught us.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay, this one from Daniel Santos. Thanks, Luis, for bringing up this topic. When is it actually a good thing for society to use one size fits all, the Procrustean solution rules, instead of treating everyone differently?
Okay, across the world, we have a bad understanding of what it means everybody is equal in terms of law. Because it needs to be understood all the time. There's equality. However, the equality is based on what? The equality for each of these societies is based on what? It's based on the height, our height. Shorter people and higher people are different. It's based on color of hair. It's based on what? You see, Spiritism studies the evolution of the intelligent principle. So there is no one size fits all in terms of intelligent principle. Each intelligent principle is, because we all started at the same point, simple and ignorant, but throughout our spiritual history, we got to different points. So the one size fits all, it might be applied to certain things in a material life, not to the intelligent principle. If you force all the intelligent principles in one society, let's say a society of 10 people, so you have 10 different intelligent principles in 10 different levels. If you force those 10 intelligent principles to be at the same level, it's going to be a problem, because let's say the levels goes from here to here, and the leader of that society is down here. If that leader of this society wants to bring all the intelligent principles to behave like this, it's going to be a problem, because the guy over here is never going to come down to this level. He got past that long time ago. So, the one size fits all is only applicable when it is to things in a material life, not in terms of intelligent principle.
Okay. You have many accolades, but here was a question that I authored as I was digesting your material. Do you have recommendations for improving patience and communication skills, as well as techniques for educating humanity with this Procrustean consciousness?
Yeah, I think I mentioned some of it. It's very hard for us to accept that we do this, that we perform these things at times. I think the best way that we have is to first observe others, observe our own criticism on what other people do. Other people will do Procrustean solutions, will perform. We're going to look at them, and instead of criticizing, oh, he's doing this, okay, let's talk about this. That person did this. Do I do the same thing? Do I do something similar? Have I experienced something like that? You see, I have to use that in my own favor, for my own benefit. So yeah, as long as we use other people's attitudes, not for criticism, but for learning as a stepping stone, then we're going to see that. For example, patience. Patience is difficult if you're not patient. So let's say, for example, that I'm not patient at all, and Mark is very patient.
The
So
other
I
way
look at
around.
Mark. No, no, let's do it this way. So I look at Mark and I say, "Oh my God, this guy is so patient. I wish I could be like him." So that triggers a process here. So then, if I decide to let me just go close to him, we're in a party, for example, and let me just go to him because he seems so patient. Okay, that's fine. However, that's not going to make me patient. That assuming that that would make me patient is a Procrustean solution, it's a Procrustean attitude. I have to do the job to make it happen. So several of those skills we cannot inherit from other people, but we can use what they are like, their attitudes to benefit ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've heard many sermons and presentations around the theme of be like Mike, be like Jesus, be
Yeah.
like Luis. Okay, I get it. And again, you have many messages here in the chat window of accolades. Uh, Adriana Barbosa, thank you, Luis, for your work and lecture today, as an example.
Thank you.
Next week, our speaker will be Edward Christie with his presentation titled Speaking Faith. So I want to thank Luis again and everyone on the call for joining today, and for those who regularly follow this Spiritism Talk series. Your continued engagement is truly appreciated. Feel free to reference this in your own Spiritist circles and centers. This is a great presentation for people to come and watch on their own time. We invite you to join us again next Saturday, as we said, with our next speaker. And Luis, any final remarks? And maybe you can lead us in a closing prayer.
Yeah, let's do a prayer. Let's concentrate on the image of our master and guide, Jesus. Let's thank him for the opportunity that we are having here, not only here, but the opportunities that we are given in life every day. Thank you, Jesus, for letting us participate in other people's lives, acquiring more experience. We ask you to be with those in hospital beds, several of them in terminal situations that do not understand why they are in such a situation. They can be, they can receive the good fluids and proceed with their life. We also want you to, be present with those in prisons. Once again, most of them don't even understand why they are in prison, and they can be, you know, receive also the fire fluids. So thank you, Jesus, for all the experiences that we have had. Thank you for all the lives that we have had, and that we can reflect upon our own situations to avoid being Procrustean. Thanks so much, and so be it.
And so it is.